couple of years ago, Six Flags announced Six Flags Qiddiya, the brand new theme park coming to Saudi Arabia. And this didn't look like your average Six Flags park. From the concept art, this looked more in line with Magic Kingdom than just another Six Flags dome. But by far, the biggest thing that was drawing headlines to this park was the announcement of a new ride called Falcons Flight. This would be the tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster in the world, climbing an entire mountain, having 2 inversions, and flying through a tunnel that transports you to another dimension. And of course, most people are calling cap. These crazy proposals pop up every now and then, and they almost always get scrapped, and this looked like it was following that trend. And I've been on record saying... Cheating. Plus, we know this ride isn't going to get built. It's a fan fiction. Like, come on. You don't need to lie to yourself. This is not...
Don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid?
Because for the longest time, I really did not think this was even possible financially and just technologically. But to my surprise, and I think to everyone's surprise, just a couple of weeks ago, we got an official rendering for this ride's complete layout with manufacturer and even a release date, kind of. So get your lap bars down and keep your head back, because today I'm going to take you on a ride on the world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster. That was really corny. I don't know why I was talking like a commercial. Anyways, this ride is going to Six Flags Qiddiya in Saudi Arabia, and the only reason this is actually happening is because Six Flags is not financing this park. It's being paid for by the Qiddiya investment company to increase tourism to the area and to the country. And if they wanted to increase tourism, then this is the way to do it. Already this ride is making headlines, and once it gets built, get ready for your TikTok feed to be flooded with...
Would you ride this crazy roller coaster?
I don't think people really understand what it means to have a new world's tallest coaster. The current record holder is King Nakah at Six Flags Great Adventure at a whopping 456 feet. 456 feet is really tall. They have airplane lights at the top of King Nakah. But here's the thing. The ride is essentially one hill. It launches you straight up, then straight back down, and then it breaks, and there's not really much going on. Not only is Falcons Flight taller, but it's also a full layout. You're not getting launched up to the top height only to come back down. You're actually doing stuff at that height, and you almost reach it twice. Oh, and one more thing. That height is 640 feet. This ride isn't just edging out the record by a couple feet. There's legitimately an entire roller coaster's worth of height in between Falcons Flight and King Nakah. That is insane. And yeah, you could say that it's cheating because it's built on the side of a quarry or mountain or whatever, but honestly, I don't think it matters. There was just no way that they would build a 640-foot lift hill. There's just like not enough steel. Really, this is the only way we're getting a ride of this scale, so I am all for it. This is also going to be the fastest roller coaster in the world at 155 miles an hour. That breaks the record by 6 miles an hour, taking it from Formula Rossa at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi. Now, Formula Rossa requires riders to wear safety goggles to protect their eyes from the launch. I don't know if that's purely because of how fast this thing is going or because it's like built in a desert. If it's really because of the speed, then there's a good chance you'll have to wear goggles in Falcons Flight too. But I feel like it's probably because of like the sand and shit from the surroundings. I don't know exactly where on the ride you reach top speed, but my guess is it's either here or here. This one is after the biggest drop on the ride, or at least I think the biggest drop on the ride off the quarry, so logically this should be where the top speed is. But it also looks like it's going equally fast after this giant hill, which for some reason looks like just as big as the drop that came before it, which like physics doesn't really allow. But then after this one, they burn off a lot of speed with straight tracks, so maybe this is somehow 640 feet and this is the top speed. I don't know. Regardless, it's gonna feel really freaking fast. The last record this ride takes is the length record. This is 4,250 meters or 13,943 feet long, which beats the record by about 5,000 feet of track. And even though that's probably the most significant record in terms of difference between it and second, I don't really care about it that much because it doesn't really affect the ride experience. Don't get me wrong, this is not a short ride, but it's not like super duper long in terms of like actual seconds of ride time. Most of the track length just comes from building a coaster of this scale. Remember, the biggest drop is 640 feet, which is already longer than a lot of kiddie coasters. Then you have to super scale all the elements to burn off a lot of speed. Like a lot of this 13,000 feet is straight track. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need that for a ride like this, but it's not as exciting as a record as the other two. But regardless of how I feel about the records, the fact of the matter is this ride still breaks all of them. But here's the thing. A lot of record-breaking roller coasters just aren't amazing rides. King Nakah is a perfect example of a ride just built to edge out the record, but really isn't that great of a ride overall. So is this ride just a big marketing ploy to get people to the park? Is it really clickbait all along? This is actually going to be an amazing ride. I honestly think this will be one of the best coaster experiences on the planet. Yeah, there might be other rides that are technically better with more airtime, more inversions, better pacing, and yada yada yada. But just the sheer magnitude of this ride is going to boost it in a lot of people's rankings. Going through elements at that speed of those heights is going to be something you'll never forget. But instead of just vaguely praising different aspects of the rides, let me go through and show you why this is going to be one of the best coasters in the world. The ride starts with a turn out of the station into the lift, and let me just say, these trains look incredible. I love love when coasters take on an animal, and I think these are doing it really well. It's very noticeably a bird, or I guess a falcon, but it's not overdoing anything or being too over the top. Oh, and also these trains have lap bars. You're doing this all with a lap bar. You then go up the lift hill, which looks pretty fast, so it'll probably be a cable lift, knowing that it's Intamin building this, but more on that later. Then you have a curve first drop, which isn't the max ride of the ride. Realistically, this will probably be like a 200-foot drop, which is still really good. The twist halfway down is going to make it really aggressive for the people in the back and probably a standout moment on the ride. Then there's a couple of low-to-the-ground elements to kick off the ride. You got 2 speed hills back to back, then a wave turn, another speed hill. You go into straight section before the second lift. And if I'm going to be honest, this is probably going to be the weakest point of the ride. I don't know if it's the animation or not, but it looks like you're really taking all of these elements really slow, and there's no inversions for cool hang time or anything, so I don't know if any of these elements are going to be very memorable. Maybe the wave turn because it'll get like sideways hang time or something. I don't know. It just reminds me of the slow elements on Pantheon before the switch track, but like you don't really think about those. The only cool one out of those is the 0G roll, but that's only because of hang time, and with no inversions on Falcons Flight, this intro section is probably not going to be anything special. I'm sure it won't be bad, like one of the air times is bound to hit and it's better than nothing, but really, if it's running at this speed in the animation, then yeah, it's going to be one of the dullest points of the ride. However, it is quickly livened up because you launch up the second lift, and I'm like 94% sure that this is a launch, because I don't know why they would animate this faster than the initial lift if this was just another cable or chain lift. Also, it's really rare for a ride to have a launch and a chain lift. We've seen it happen before, but usually the rides are one or the other, so this is kind of cool that they're trying both. Anyways, you finish the launch and you're still climbing the hill while turning, which I don't really know how that works. That's not how gravity works. But when you reach the top, you've lost essentially all of your speed for a nice, slow, panoramic view of your surroundings. There's a cool outer bank over the edge and some bunny hops, but this top section is really for you to appreciate how high up you are and to get ready for what's about to happen. Now, I do think it's a little short for what it's trying to do here, but it's a nice interlude before you get to the main course of the ride, and I'm glad that they included it. Now, the drop here itself is not very big. You start at a steep angle and then level out into more of a gradual decline to pick up speed. This drop looks really cool because it's probably just another 200-foot drop like the first one, but it's straight down. Really though, the main drop of this ride and the signature element is this massive camelback coming up. Now again, this looks like the tallest point of the ride from the animation, but scientifically that should not be possible unless there's some sort of launch that I'm not seeing in this valley. So I'm just gonna assume that the drop of the quarry, including this like weird angle of descent, is the biggest on the ride, and this is the second biggest. Okay, this is Coastins from editing, and I really don't know what I was saying in this part of the video. This hill is definitely the tallest point on the ride. It looks way taller than anything like else on the ride, like even that drop before, and that's definitely intentional. There's probably just a launch like on the way up in the valley or something. That being said, I still think the camelback will be one of, if not the best airtime moments on planet Earth. It still looks to be at least like 400 feet, which is the biggest camelback we've ever had on any coaster. Yeah, there's King Kong Dragster, but those are not camelbacks. Like those don't give you airtime. Plus there's a twist on the drop. This is just straight ejector all the way through, and I do think it will be ejector, not floater, even though it's shaped like a floater hill, just based on purely how fast you're taking it. And after that, you have some bank turns to burn off speed into the brakes. And I know these may look boring, but when you're on the ride, it's going to be amazing. Taking these at 100+ miles an hour is going to feel like a fighter jet cutting through sound. Plus there's a head dropper like right there that's going to be crazy. And that's the whole ride. Again, not the most technical ride out there, not the best sequenced or paced or planned, but it will definitely be one of the best experiences. However, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. There is one thing I haven't really talked about, and that will heavily affect the experience, and that is the manufacturer. Intamin building this ride is a huge pro because that means the ride will actually be built. No other manufacturer in a million years would ever take on such a crazy project like this, but Intamin building this ride is also a huge con because of one word: reliability. This ride will be a nightmare to get on. First of all, I don't even know if it's going to open. They have a speculated release date of 2024, but that will definitely get pushed back if Intamin is handling it. And second of all, Intamin's record breakers are historically very unreliable and even accident prone. With a launch in the middle of the ride and all the normal Intamin bugs that they'll have to work through, this ride will be one of the moodiest out there. There will be a lot of people who go to this park specifically for this ride and just won't be able to go on it because the ride will be down for like the entire day. And there's nothing they can do about it. With a ride this ambitious, there is going to be some bugs that they're going to have to work out, and they might just never work out. It might just plague the ride forever like it did for Dragster. So for some people, this ride's going to be a big scam, and for others, it'll be unforgettable. Another factor though is the location of this ride. This is in Saudi Arabia, which isn't exactly the most accessible location. Already a lot of people said this ride looks great, but they'll never ride it because they'll never go there. I don't want to get into any politics, but even just the location of the country alone isn't very accessible. And I guess that's part of the point. They're trying to increase tourism to this country to make it more accessible because it's not a highly traveled area of the world. And I think it'll work for people in Europe and maybe other parts of the Middle East, but for Americans, we're just too far. Maybe for the hardest core coaster fans, it'll be viable, but for most people, at least in America, and I think that's the demographic I'm talking to with my channel, it's just not worth the money. But if you can go, it'll be an experience that you'll never forget. And that's basically it. That's my summary and thoughts on the next world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster, Falcons Flight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Will it live up to the hype? Will it flop? Will it even get built? It still could get canceled last minute. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end, and I will see you in the next one.